Hello and welcome to the Motor Week Christmas special. We're going to be looking at what we consider to be some of the key cars, the biggest stories and the best motor shows of 2000. From the long-awaited replacement for Subaru's legendary Impreza Turbo to the rep's favourite, the motorway-bashing all-new Ford Mondeo and Porsche's stunning Carrera GT. These are just a few, so keep watching. One of the hardest things for any manufacturer to do is to change their image as a brand, but Audi have in recent years managed to do just that. Gone are their days of being known for rather boring and staid cars. Now they're known for offering a range of sporty cars that give practicality, along with some of the highest levels of build quality. But a small city car with 4 rings on the bonnet, well, we knew it had to be interesting, but would it be any good? Best small car, the Audi A2.
It's only about 2.5 years ago since this car was a concept at Frankfurt. And like the TT, the production version has stayed pretty much the same as the concept version. You couldn't honestly say it's got stunning looks to it, but I think the design probably grows on you. What you do know you're going to get though is top-class build quality and some sort of exclusivity, because Audi only intend to sell about 2,500 A2s every year in the UK.
If it seems odd that such a tiny car should grow on me so quickly, take some consolation in that it hasn't grown on those people at Mercedes. Because with this, Audi have delivered the most almighty kick in the teeth to the Mercedes A-Class, their own little tiny city car. Because this offers, again, build quality at the kind of level you'd expect in a car 3 or 4 times its size and price, along with, for such a tiny frame, a surprising amount of space. It's obviously mostly to do with the layout, but the whole feeling of space is helped by a really simple, uncluttered and rather futuristic interior, and the use of those high quality materials and excellent standards of fit and finish that reassure you certainly don't feel you're sitting in a flimsy tin box. Far from it. Best sports car, the Vauxhall VX220.
Now here's a little giveaway to help you. Recognise the badge? Yes, it's a Vauxhall. Now it wouldn't surprise me if you were totally amazed at that, because this is not your average sensible family Vauxhall. This is the boys from Vauxhall gone mad with the VX220 sports car. It's absolutely stunning looking, but of course it was designed with one thing in mind: driving.
Okay, while Ken enjoys his drive through the Swiss mountains, let's take a closer look at the car itself. This is another case of taking a concept car straight from under the spotlights of the world's motor shows and then, well, just letting it loose on the road, really. Vauxhall turned to Lotus to help them develop this new sports car. The VX220 relies heavily on the Elise platform, which is no bad thing. Lotus and Vauxhall claim that these cars aren't actually competitors, even though they both come in at exactly the same price, £22,995. Best road trip, the Volvo V70 cross country to Sweden.
A lovely long line of pristine new Volvo V70 cross countries, and I'm in Denmark to test drive them. And this is my car. First stop is a very peculiar thing. It's a bridge that isn't open to the public yet and hasn't finished being constructed. What's so special about that? I'm going to go find out. Here I am driving along a lovely bridge in the sunshine, but this is no ordinary bridge. This is the first ever bridge between two countries, those countries being Denmark and Sweden, and it's a pretty long bridge, 16 kilometres long. In fact, it's the biggest ever erection that the Danes and the Swedes have managed. I mean construction, of course.
While Glenda enjoys her trip from Denmark to Sweden then, a few details about the Volvo V70 Cross Country. Volvo have made no secret about their intention to become a specialist manufacturer of estate cars. Face it, we've long associated them with such a thing. But the Cross Country, whilst no competitor for your straight off-roader, does bring a whole new dimension. It'll cope with the worst of winter weather. Should you need to cross a field with all of your kids and your luggage, no problem. And don't forget the legendary Volvo build quality. Most fashionable new car, the Chrysler PT Cruiser.
Driving into Las Vegas is absolutely weird. It just appears out of nowhere in the middle of a desert.
Good old Ken, he couldn't take the PT Cruiser to Morecambe Bay, could he? Had to be Las Vegas. Mind you, got to admit, it does suit the car. And now, as always, what's big over there is getting to be big over here, and the Cruiser is becoming quite a common sight on our roads. Not that that stops it turning heads. But if you've bought one, once the novelty does wear off, what are you left with? The good news is quite a lot of those custom touches are carried through to the interior as well, but the same goes for the exterior here. The image of the thing does not compromise its practicality. There's loads of space, it's easy to use. What they've very cleverly done is pep up what's been until now one of the most boring of classes, the Mini MPV. And it's a good class to pep up because the frustrated family man or woman wants to have all the practicality of their Mini MPV and still look good on the high street. In America, they've got a website dedicated to these things. They're nuts about them. If it enjoys a fraction of that success in Europe, Chrysler are going to do very, very well indeed out of the PT Cruiser. Perhaps the one area in which the Cruiser doesn't do itself justice is in performance and handling. Just one look will tell you it is pretty top heavy. The engine is hardly exciting and neither is it thrilling at the controls. What it really needs is a performance version in the range, more power, perhaps even lowered as well. Most controversial new car, the Mini. In 2000, BMW finally showed us what next year's follow-up to the Mini will look like. Opinions on the design, not surprisingly, are split. Personally, I think it works. Yes, it's a lot bigger than the old Mini, but face it, people are a lot bigger than people used to be. And so it's out with the old, as after 40 years we finally say goodbye to the old Mini. A fond farewell to the Fiat Coupe.
Even now it's a striking design. Back then we'd seen nothing like it. The dynamic body shape alone was enough to make it stand out, but it was the extra little touches that made it every inch the Mini Ferrari.
Ah well, goodbye then to the Fiat Coupe. OK, it was never the best on the market, but I reckon it had a certain flair, and I doubt I'll be alone in missing it. Join us in part 2 as we continue to review the best of motoring in 2000. From the hot new Subaru Impreza WRX, to Porsche's gorgeous new Carrera GT, and Ford's all-new Mondeo. We'll see you after the break. Most eagerly anticipated car, the new Subaru Impreza Turbo. Oh yes, thank you so much. Thank you. As soon as you pull away, there's no doubt that you're in an Impreza turbo, mostly because of that engine note. It's still that gorgeous, horizontally opposed boxer, 4 cylinders, beating out that way, so you get a lovely raspy note. Can't mistake it for anything else. Huge amount of torque till you pull away, leap off, and then the drive itself, well, first impressions, the suspension is just overwhelmingly competent. It soaks up the smaller bumps and feels actually quite comfortable, but as soon as it gets a bit harsher and you start to push the car, it tightens up and you can feel it is going to keep the car glued to the road. We only had a chance for a brief drive of the Impreza on its launch. We've spent more time with it since, and it's only gone to reinforce what we first thought. Sure, it's not quite as pin-sharp and raw as the previous model, but the little that it's lost in terms of performance, it's more than gained in creature comforts and all-round usability. Once again then behind the wheel that just about everybody seemed to want to get behind in 2000. And it must have been terrifying for Subaru when they wheeled their new baby out in front of the slavering press and hungry punters alike, because manufacturers suffer from something close to first novel syndrome, in that once you've had one hit, it's almost impossible to follow it up. So to do so well is a bit of a challenge, but they have. They've decided to knock some of the edge off, as we've said, and what we've got is a car that gives you even more reasons to own it, even better excuses for your bank manager and partner alike for buying what is still a ferocious performance car. But now you've got a little bit more comfort, slightly more refinement in the cabin, even more practicality as your superb excuses for owning it. But at the same time, you can get out on nice tight country roads and really enjoy one of the most exploitable rally-bred four-wheel drive systems in the world. Sexiest car, the Porsche Carrera GT. Porsche unveiled their gorgeous Carrera GT at the Paris Motor Show, announcing that it'll be on sale in, well, it all depends whether or not they get enough orders, so dig deep. Current estimates put the price at over £400,000. You'll have to dig very deep indeed. Mind you, apart from looking good, the engine produces sufficient power for a sub 4-second 0 to 60 time, and you'll easily become a member of the exclusive 200-mile-an-hour club. The 75, a car that so many of us really want to like, if only because of all that's happened to poor old Rover. 2000, of course, was the year when their position within the BMW group finally turned sour, and the Germans decided to offload the ailing British marque. Offload them, that is, after they'd been through the sideboard and rifled all the family silver. So Land Rover was sold separately to Ford, and they kept the mini brand for themselves, leaving poor old Rover pretty much out on a limb, really. They were picked up eventually by the Alchemy Group, and well, let's just say we'll cross our fingers and wait and see what happens when they start selling their cars under the MG badge. I'm looking forward to seeing the 75 wearing that famous octagon. Whichever way you look at it, this is actually a very nice place to be settling back in here, albeit in a very old-fashioned walnut wood and leather kind of a way. But I like that. And the nicer it gets in the 75, it's odd, and the better it gets, the sadder I get, because if it had only come along just a little bit earlier, it could have saved them, but there's no point thinking like that. We've got to accept it. Alchemy are going to be looking after it, badged as an MG. The only thing they need is a partner to come along and help them work on and develop the car. So, maybe you've got a few million to spare. Why buy one? Why not buy into the company and help them put it together? You get a great spot in the company car park, I'm sure. But the politics of it aside, back to the 75 itself. Right from launch, apart from its rather handsome looks, the whole car is about stately progress. It's very much a Rover in the old sense of Rover. Stately, elegant, smart. Kind of ironic, really, because it won't be a Rover for very much longer. But still, whatever it's badged, a very competitive, pleasant car. Excellent ride, decent handling, very good looking, and still that lovely, smart, relaxing interior. Most important new car, the Ford Mondeo. It's interesting that Ford haven't replaced the old Granada Scorpio. Bless it. But then why should they? They happen to own Volvo, that produced the extremely competent S80. And the new Mondeo offers more space inside than the old Scorpio did anyway. Plus, thanks to its technically independent rear suspension, similar to that found in the Focus, it's an extremely comfortable ride. Not every important new car has to be the most exciting supercar on the block. This car is very important for Ford and its position in the market. It is a vast improvement on the old Mondeo. Ride, interior space, handling, all of it goes up market. The reps will love it. It does have some stiff competition in this sector though. The Passat is superb, and there's an all-new Vectra on the cards from Vauxhall. Come to think about it, could it be coincidence that there's more than a little bit of the Passat about the Mondeo from the side, maybe from the front, maybe from the back as well? Ginny Buckley takes a look at some of the highlights from the motor shows throughout 2000.
Just days into the new millennium, the Detroit Auto Show got us off to a fantastic start with Jaguar's gorgeous F-Type. The word is that the new cat will be on our roads by 2002. And as always, Chrysler had a few fantastic concepts on show to tantalise us with. Mercedes unveiled their mini roadster for the masses, the radically designed SLA. And the first signs of Audi's ownership of the Italian supercar maker Lamborghini with an updated Diablo. Look out for the all-new Diablo in 2001. Where else could Rolls-Royce choose to reintroduce its famous convertible, the Corniche? Well, surprisingly, it was Geneva. General Motors kept our appetites whetted with their budget sports car, the Opel Speedster. Available here, of course, is the Vauxhall VX220. And another car destined for the roads, Lotus's boxed arrivaling M250. Now, Lotus were cagey about the engine to power this beauty, but reports claim that the 250 brake horsepower V6 from the Renault Sport Clio V6 may be the one to do it. The French flag was flying high at the Paris Motor Show, as Citroën chose to show us the face of its cars for the future, released first on their new version of the Zara. And Peugeot showed us that almost anything is possible, with some very odd concepts based on their 206. And from weird to chic, as the 206 Coupe Cabriolet finally went from concept to production. It'll be in UK showrooms in time to thaw out next spring. And finally, competition in the executive market became even more intense as Renault unveiled its Laguna 2. Now, we showed you more of this car earlier, but it's gorgeous and we all want one, so we're going to show it you again. It was the first time in the UK for Porsche's stunning new Carrera GT at the Birmingham Motor Show. And Jensen continued their revival with the new coupe, the CV8. And fast becoming a requirement of any British motor show is a brace of TVR concepts, which are usually heading for production, and of course they didn't let us down. And guess what? We'll be bringing you the weird and the wonderful from the motoring shows once again next year.
And that's it for our look back at some of the motoring highlights of 2000. But enough of this festivity, it's back to business as usual next week. Not that it'll be boring, far from it. Some of the highlights throughout January on Motor Week include a close look at Lotus. I'll be pitching the new Subaru Impreza against the old Subaru Impreza. And Ginny Buckley will be looking at the entire Volkswagen range. Have a great Christmas, see you soon. Garages from Hell, the ITV network show focusing on the rotten side of cars and motoring, is returning soon. And once again, they've asked the #1 motoring channel, Granada Men & Motors, for help. If you've had any problems when having your car serviced, or if you've ever been sold a real lemon, we'd like to hear from you. You might get it off your chest and onto the telly. Call Kate on 0207 578 4246 or write to Kate Beetham at 16 Hatfields, London, SE1 8DJ.